Here we go. In Elon Musk's version of Batman, California Governor Newsom is the one playing the Joker. Elon Musk compared Newsom to the Batman villain after Newsom signed legislation banning local governments from requiring voters to present their ID when they go to vote. Musk wrote, quote, "Wow, it is now illegal to require voter ID in California. They just made preventing voter fraud against the law. The Joker is in charge." Newsom's new laws in response to Huntington Beach's controversial voter ID requirement, controversial to some, which was passed by residents in March.
In other Newsom news, the California governor vetoed a sweeping AI safety legislation that would have been the first in the country to place strict guardrails on AI. The bill would have required powerful AI models to undergo safety testing before being released to the public. It also sought to hold developers liable for severe harm caused by their models. Plus, it mandated a kill switch to turn off AI systems in case of potential biowarfare, property damage, or mass casualties. Explaining his veto, Newsom said in a statement, quote, "I do not believe this is the best approach to protecting the public from real threats posed by the technology. Instead, the bill applies stringent standards to even the most basic functions, so long as a large system deploys it." Newsom also said the bill was, quote, "well-intentioned, but does not take into account whether an AI system is deployed in high-risk environments involving critical decision-making or the use of sensitive data." Google, Meta, Microsoft, and OpenAI had all opposed the legislation, claiming it hurt innovation and would ultimately slow down the U.S.
New York Times claims that the waves of recent vetoes from Newsom shows he's actually more centrist than those on the right like to portray him. The Times points to Newsom recently rejecting warning labels on gas stoves, that's good, and free condoms in high school. I wonder whose idea that was.
The Times further says Newsom is treading on thin ice as Republicans have sought to attack Harris by bashing her home state.
So I do think that Gavin Newsom has been trying to shake the perception that many have of him, especially many on the right, as him being this ultra-liberal governor. Maybe he's thinking of a future run for higher office at a later juncture. Now, of course, Elon was upset with him over the voter ID thing. That's very par for the course, is Democrats vetoing such measures. Of course, voting illegally is a crime, but it's important to conservatives to show ID, and I see you smiling at me, so you probably have some views on that.
Well, first off, I don't think Gavin Newsom has changed much. I think he's always been pretty center-left. Just follow the money. Just see how people take donations. With that being said, I like him, and I think he'd be a great presidential candidate for the future.
I don't like him because of COVID.
Of course you don't like him because of COVID. I mean, I don't love that he went and had dinner at a fancy, one of the best restaurants in the country during COVID.
While we were all trapped, shut in our homes.
You were trapped.
When he had personally chained the padlocks on the parks, he's off dining at what was the place called? The French Laundry?
Yes, the French Laundry.
Which doesn't actually sound like a very elegant restaurant, but it's...
Yeah, San Francisco food scene's very nice. But, okay, with that being said, the voter ID laws, it came out of Huntington Beach, a city council, a very right-wing city council, and it basically would have made it so that all these different municipalities, I think there's 100 or so different charter cities, that have, they would all have different set of voting standards and that they would oversee them. It just was a bad law. Also, with that being said, 13% of our country, not because they're illegal, not because they're trying to cheat voting, because that's what people want to do with their time, 13% of the country does not have access or the finances to provide the documentation in some cases to receive their IDs for voter ID. It's just a bad law. We know every single report, the Brennan Center, we have so many different reports at this point that show when there's election fraud, it's usually because someone's trying to overturn the results, January 6th. That's the result. I also find it hilarious that Elon Musk is so concerned with valid identification, the man who lets millions of bots occupy Twitter and boost his arguments. The guy doesn't care about valid ID. He cares about his opportunistic
I think he cares
agenda.
About illegal immigrants voting.
He doesn't. He is an immigrant.
Well, he's not an illegal immigrant.
No, now he's. Oh, and many of these people aren't either. That's the.
Well, then they can show ID. What's the?
So if you're
crazy,
elderly,
I have to show ID. You have to show ID to buy alcohol at the bar.
Tax.
It should be.
It's a poll tax. You don't have a right to drink alcohol.
What are the
You
ID?
have a right to vote.
In all circumstances, it's just wrong to ask for ID.
That's a different question.
Why when it's for our elections?
Because it's an inherent right, and every single good governance organization that focuses on electoral.
Okay, next time I get pulled over on the highway, I'll say, I know I have an inherent right. I'm not going to show you anything.
That's not, you don't have an inherent right to drive. You have an inherent right to vote. So if you're elderly, if you were born, it's not as often anymore, but you were born in the South, the record keeping wasn't strong. If you're elderly, it's hard. It's hard to keep up with your ID.
Look, I hate going to the DMV as much as anyone else, but if it's important to you to vote, I think the burden is on you.
I'm going to tell you a little secret, and all of our viewers. I have an ID from college that doesn't expire till 2049. I live in New York City. I'm a resident of New York City. I vote in New York City. I pay taxes in New York City. Everything. It's for over 10 years, and I don't have a New York ID card because I don't drive in New York. And I tried one time, and I went to the Bronx, and I waited in line for 3 hours, and then they told me that I had to bring 4 proof of identification. I just moved my apartment, and it was all based on your previous expenses to get an ID card. So this is how difficult. I gave up. I said, I'm not doing this again. I had 3. I had 3. I did not have enough.
Okay, let's talk about this AI safety bill, which I am glad he vetoed because I don't like the idea of putting the government in greater control or limiting the reach of this technology. I think we will fall behind our global competitors if the federal government or the state government or anyone stifles important research and innovation being done here. I don't at all trust them. What they want to backdoor encrypt all of it so the government can spy on us. Technology is liberating us, is finding ways to get around the government's desperate need to control us at all times. So of course they're reacting poorly to that.
But you trust Microsoft and all these big companies, Meta, more than you trust our governor?
Yes.
I just disagree with you. I disagree with you. This is why we have laws.
That doesn't mean I trust them. I said you should trust more.
You trust them more, really? I don't trust Bill Gates. I don't trust this right-wing libertarian, Silicon Valley, ecosystem of boys that all have their agenda. They want to take over the world.
And what? And faceless government bureaucrats don't have an agenda?
Of course they do, but they're
well-meaning public servants. You
can hold them accountable. You can't hold these guys accountable.
Actually, it's harder to hold them accountable. You can hold these people accountable by not using their products and service. And there's tremendous market disruption in the tech sector. No one is king. You say, oh, this is an unbeatable monopoly, and then there's some new company that comes along and kick them. There's been so much of this person is in this company is in this unbeatable position, and then remember Yahoo search, all that. It just changes because there's so much innovation and competition in this sector. It actually works. Where there isn't innovation and competition is in the overseers and the regulators. And I think it's the worst idea ever to have some government commission in charge of the pace at which these technologies develop.
I think
it's not about trusting the company. It's about knowing that if they do a bad job, there are market checks, or if something else that's better comes along, and they're responsive to that. Yeah, they're not responsive to our opinions. They're responsive to the markets. But that gives us more power than we have over the faceless bureaucrats who are tweaking social media in ways we would have never even known if Elon hadn't purchased Twitter and pulled back the curtain a little bit and shown the exhaustive level of communications between federal agents at every department and the moderators at Twitter. The moderators under the previous leadership, who even they thought most of the guidance they were getting from the government was BS.
Jack Dorsey picked Elon Musk to take over Twitter in his own little coup. So, they're all in cahoots. But I think what we're leaving out here is that you trust a robot to make decisions about national security. I mean, there are real issues here in terms of biowarfare. I don't trust the market to make a decision. If that were the case, we wouldn't have clean water. If that were the case, our skies would be cloudy all the time with smoke and smog. You have to trust government to regulate some things.
Yes, public spaces need to be. I mean, I'm in favor of tragedy of the commons, where no one has clear decision rights over public space. You end up having a lot of it not being taken care of well. So I'm for actually transferring as much of the public space into private ownership as possible, such that the people who actually own the space end up taking care of it. But to the extent that we need to have public spaces, yes, of course there's going to be some rules consistent with the First Amendment and the Bill of Rights for what happens in the public space. I'm not saying there's going to be no regulation, but you're talking about private technologies and innovation that is being done all over the world that I want us to be a global leader in. I mean, the reason that America is so important and so dominating in terms of its tech sector is because we have better protections for speech-related technological innovation than they do in Europe or China or South America or anywhere else. And that's a good thing. And we should be zealously guarding that.
I think one of the reasons why America is so ahead of everyone else in terms of technology is because the government funded the internet, and it was a project of the government. And when we actually fund those institutions internally, we grow even more. Now, if the government wanted to take control of AI, I would say there are more standards and they can be held accountable, where it's very hard to hold Elon Musk accountable and these private companies accountable, and you don't know what their agendas are, and there is a monopoly situation. Lena Khan addresses this. You know, she talks about how these monopolies have been buying up all these smaller innovators to kill them because they want to innovate internally. This is not a world where it's a competitive marketplace anymore. We're in Web 3.0. It is not. It's so hard to start a startup nowadays. When you do, they get eaten up by Google, or, I mean, do you want to start a competitor to Google? Good luck. You know nobody uses those competitors.
Google came out of nowhere and beat the previous competition. It could happen again. Look, if they offer a product that gets out-competed, look, it's not easy to do. I'm not saying it happens every day, but there is more creative destruction in this sector than in any other sector of the economy.
I would say healthcare.
I mean, look at the top 10
science.
Tech companies, like year over year, over time, over the last 15 years. They change like crazy.
Yeah, because they're eating up all their competition and stealing their...
It's not just that. It's not just that.
Well, there definitely is a monopoly of power, and I don't trust that much power in the hands of a few that have very little accountability to anybody besides their board of directors and maybe if they're publicly traded. Maybe. That's not really democracy, in my opinion.
You tell us what you think. We'll have more Rising right after this.